We'll get started here in a minute. Page 10, page. Joining us, Chocolate.
Excellent.
Adrian will more than likely not be attending today as he is currently in the Microsoft Build conference. Awesome. I'm attending. I'm listening to a very quiet, it's almost like smooth jazz in the background on my other screen here. That's how that's how I tend to listen to these things. It's like really smooth jazz, and there's presentations, and I get to watch a lot of that stuff go down. So all good stuff there. All right, we're coming to 5 minutes in. Would anyone like to scribe today?
I will scribe if people will help. David Wheeler.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
It is my honor.
The agenda is I want to say the agenda is very light today. What I did want to do was go over a couple of things from the summit. I wanted to touch on those things for a bit. There's also a couple of things that we wanted to make sure that we opined on a little bit. There are still a few issues that we're working through. As well. Checking those now to see if there are any updates to them. Some conversation on these issues going about, especially updated put in a new threat into the matrix. That was some time ago. I believe there's still a conversation around that. Of course, if there's anything else anyone else wants to bring up or put an issue in for, go ahead and do that. So yeah, let's get started. Open source North America, so Summit North America, that happened. We had a couple of great discussions, a couple of hallway track conversations, but then we had a nice panel discussion for Salsa, S2C2F, and Fresca, and that has some good questions to it. We want to make sure that we do a tight little follow up with that. All of them well received overall. We did have a couple of questions around the threat matrices and the respective frameworks, whether or not those were highlighted enough to depict how the frameworks could be utilized or what kind of threats are mitigated through use of the respective frameworks. We wanted to make sure that we talked about those things. I think we did a pretty good job of it in the conversation, so that was good. Um, One of the things I wanted to make sure that we clued in on, especially as the discussions over the last couple of days with respect to salsa, I wanted to make sure that that it's understood through the reading of the text in the spec, that we understand that S2C2F is a security framework. If that's not clear, then let's discuss that, and let's make sure we get an issue put up that details why it details that needs to be uh, properly articulated in the spec, so that we can get that verbiage in there, and make sure that we identify what it is, what it isn't, and then make sure that the use cases are properly articulated in the spec as well, so that it's a usable framework, right? So that it's usable, right? So I'll stop there. Um, that was a lot just now. Do we have any questions, any concerns, any opinions? Anybody want to throw anything else in there? Let's have it. Tough, tough crowd, tough crowd today. Um, and of course, new people. I about to talk about new friends. I believe I've seen you in here before, Victor. But Tom, are you new? Tom, you've been in other SIGs and other work.
Yeah, I'm new to this call. I'm overall new to security. So that's why I attend mostly now the end user related work groups. So yeah, that this one, especially with salsa being published, yeah, I'm interested in joining this call to see what happens to the end user realm.
Perfect. And that's exactly what I am hoping occurs more often. You've gotten Salsa to 1.0. Let's jump on in here and see if we can make this better and bring this up. And
Quick, a
let's
quick
just go ahead
procedural
there.
question, Victor. Which organization are you with, if you are?
Independent.
Independent. Okay, that's fine. There's a lot of folks from that org.
Yeah.
I should probably go next. Jay, I first learned about S2C2F, which I finally written to memory, at the Open Source Summit a couple of weeks ago. I'm very interested in it. I'm responsible in my company for a program for consuming an awful lot of open source software, particularly the software supply chain efforts. And I kind of dabbled a little bit in some of the other working groups in the OpenSSF, but this one really struck a chord with me because it seems to really speak to our need for a consumer of it, not just a contributor, which it helps, I think, formalize or frame a lot of the efforts we're putting in, which is very useful internally, but I think perhaps we can also contribute some of our practices and maybe even technology outwardly as we mature our I guess the governance and our workflows that we have for bringing open source drives through the company and for the products we end up selling. So excited to be here. It's probably going to take me a couple of weeks to get up to speed. I found everything I need to read. Now I need to read it. So I will get on that.
Well, you know what? So then it worked.
Yeah.
It worked. Our discussions, the panel discussions, everything like that at the Open Source Summit, it worked. You're here. Excellent. We can get one. If we can reach one, whew, reach more than one, then we're doing something extra special. Have you had a chance to read the spec over?
Yes, nearly completely. I'm a few pages away from finishing it, but the maturity model, even kind of the the broad strokes of reducing MTTR for vulnerability, the governance, and just safer consumption. It's all resonating quite a bit, and it's nice to actually apply some terminology to things we're doing. I think I did one thing I have probably not, I've either missed or haven't got to yet is I feel like there are maybe two core categories of consumer of open source that this may appeal to. There are the folks that purely consume it as a consumer of digital goods, and some of those may be open source. And then there are those that are consuming open source to then create proprietary software, which they then sell, and they may have slightly different needs. From what I can see, this seems very much useful to the latter, which I'm in. I just want to check I'm not mistaken, and this is kind of help, let's say, a non-tech company deal with some of the things that are kind of come up with, like things like the CRA and this sort of thing.
Yeah. So I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think the spec could be used is usable towards the company who's new in the space, who's just starting out, and they need to kind of formalize a supply chain security methodology of some sort, or get themselves set up appropriately. And then, of course, for the company that has a process in place, this can be used to complement that, right? As like a check and a recheck. And hey, are we doing this? Are we doing that? There are a lot of organizations with supply chains and say secure, we'll shrug the shoulders. But there are a lot of organizations that already have their own processes and procedures in place, and they come across a document like this, and they read over and say, "Oh, wow, well, this is a threat that we haven't considered. Oh, and look, this is a mitigation strategy or recommendation for how we mitigate against that. We hadn't thought about implementing this before. Let's go ahead and implement it," right? And then they go drop back and they say, "Well, let's look at these different levels. Well, this particular, are we doing this, or we, and then it becomes a process of not necessarily, hey, we're going to implement this full on, but let's see how we're doing against it. And then if it's viable enough to say, okay, well, hold on, we're finding ourselves not in alignment all the way with this. Maybe we ought to implement this in alignment to be further in alignment, either compliance or to be able to. We had this conversation about the difference in the attestations. To say to be compliant with, or to be able to attest to how we have applied these sets of controls in this other framework, right? So you could use it as an and, which is great. So your use case is wonderful as well. What I will say is that you've had a chance to look at it, to read it somewhat, which is great. I would then say to you, put your thoughts down. I was hoping Melba would join. So I had a great conversation with Melba last week. I want to say it was either Thursday or Friday. And Melba highlighted, underlined, circled, put stars. And Melba did this whole thing, and we went through it, and it was wonderful because she picked the spec apart like nobody's business. And it was, these are things that I love. These are things that let's discuss. These are things that, well, should it belong here or should it belong down there? I'm not fully understanding what this is. All of that stuff, which I thought was so wonderful. I was like, you put the issues in. Put the issues in where you want to see changes. Bring it to the discussion. So hopefully Melba will get a chance to join. I know Melba's been going at it all day with stuff in her day job. But please feel free to do the same thing, because that's what this is for. This is for that. This is for the individuals who are going to consume it, use it, help build their practices off of it. to say, hey, these are the things that we're looking for in our industry, right? And so because of that, we want to make sure that we understand this threat or this particular risk, right? And let's get that stuff in there. So thank you very much for that, Tom. Any other thoughts? David had an agenda item for doing a crosswalk between SALSA version 1 and S2C2F. Go ahead, David.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not proposing we actually do that crosswalk right here, but we, I mean, obviously that's possible, but maybe we ought to talk about, what I'm hoping to do is talk somebody else into actually doing the work. Always my goal. So, but I don't know of any conflicts. I've read both documents, but not like sitting down, doing the crosswalk carefully between. But I think sooner or later we do need to do that. And I suspect there's some terminology differences that are not intentional and not needed. But just, now that we've got a 1.0 on the salsa side, trying to eliminate any unintentional burrs and, to the extent we can make things work together.
So Melba came and did identify off of first glance what could be considered an overlap. And I told her, I said, that looks like an overlap, but then when you consider what consumer means on both sides, right? You have a consumer in this way and a consumer in that way. That's when you should have that at that point, because then you're talking about what one persona is doing on one end versus what the other persona is doing on the other end, and how that handshake should occur.
What do you think about maybe making it clear that this thing over there meets this requirement over here?
Right.
So that,
right.
Again, what we're trying to do is, instead of, oh my gosh, there's two different things, twice as much work. No. These things have synergies here.
And they should have synergies. And that's
they should have synergies. Right. We're expecting that.
That's the great part about it.
Yeah.
I wish Melba was
here.
I sent a Slack to her to see if hopefully she'll be able to jump in at some point. That would be great for her to get that.
Yeah.
That item.
Did she write anything down that we can chat through, or?
She did. She had this whole she had it underlined and circled and starred. So I was trying to see if I can get her on Slack and maybe she could send it over so we can bust it open and look at it here. That would be great to do.
That would be, and worst comes to worst, I put in the meeting notes the issue number here. This is issue 14, and maybe what we could do is just slip in all those things into LinkedIn in issue 14. Ideally, have somebody kind of doing the walkthrough, and then we can basically get the information and put this to bed.
Yeah, that I think that would help, because I know internally here we're starting to try and make our for ourselves follow the S2C2F framework, because we think that there's a lot of great practices in there and that are also sort of relatively straightforward and easy to follow, which is I hope for following a security framework is a big badge of honor, because most of them are have a they get quite in the weeds there. But yeah, so I think with that, I agree, because I think we're trying to kind of follow some of the S2C2F stuff. We want to I get the general gist of it's almost like salsa artifacts that are produced are a part of a thing, and in fact can be used by something like S2C2F, where you could say, hey, if I look at this thing and it is salsa conformant, then, or if it is providing salsa provenance and I trust that provenance, I'm not going to use any overloaded terms right now. But if it's using those things, then I know that I'm most likely hitting these things from an S2C2F standpoint when I pull that in, because I know I'm doing essentially the due diligence on pulling in some of that stuff, those packages.
And I mean, man, telling you, I keep going back. I mean, you guys should have saw it. That's all I can say is you should have been there. I think Melba
Yeah.
laid it out so wonderfully. Okay. Victor, had you had a chance to read over the spec?
I did, but I'm actually also new to security overall. That's why I did, but I won't be don't remember anything at this very moment. But I'm interested in listening and talking about the cross check between the two standard.
So Victor, just so you know, I'm one of those that says when you say you're new to security, I'm one of those that says you are the perfect individual to pick this spec up, read it, and then give us your thoughts. And the reason why I say that is because you're new to security. That doesn't mean you're not in security. It means you're new to it. You understand fundamentals. Now, if you can pick this spec up and read it, understanding the fundamentals, and then it makes sense to you, then outstanding. If you pick it up and you read it and you say, you know what, this part right here, I don't expect you to read the matrix and understand what typo squatting is or what's the other one? Understanding the nuances of PHP admin and why it's the gift that keeps on giving. I don't expect you to understand those things, right? But what I will say is when you look at those and you recognize these are threats, and this is how you mitigate those threats. Oh, so what do you do? So you do this over here. Okay, well, that just takes a little bit of research to understand what that mitigation strategy actually is. Aside from that, when you read the framework, if you can read the framework and say, okay, I can follow the bouncing ball here, then that's perfect. Because that means that at your level, you can take that document and you're able to walk through it, or crawl through it and get through it, right? And then explain it to somebody else, and it doesn't take much of an explanation. You're able to apply it and then say, this is what we did and why. So you'd be the perfect person. Whereas the more seasoned you are, the more critical you're going to be, and then maybe potentially the more complacent you'll be with the controls that you've already had implemented
Yeah, I do have I was a complete knowledge. I guess database security I've been working on for 20 plus years.
Oh.
So yeah, but I look forward to asking a lot of basic fundamental questions, I guess. Look forward to that.
Yeah, you've been doing database security. You're not a newbie, Victor. You're not as new. Not as new as you said you are. You've been doing database security. I mean, hell, you walk us around server side versus client side encryption every which way from Sunday, and then there'd probably be a very spirited debate on which one is better under which circumstances and why. And very few people can actually do that. So you are you're more advanced in this game than you're letting on. All right. Let's see. Do we have anything else? And I'm not minding the minding the agenda here. Did anyone else write anything into the agenda? Seeing none. Oh, and do we want to discuss other issues? We absolutely want to discuss the issues, and we can actually go through some of the other issues now, because some of the issues are older. Some of them already have comments in place that they're currently being worked on or worked through. Take a look at okay, so we have here one that says the PHP myadmin. It seems to be misclassified. I really love if individuals who write the issues join the SIG meeting so they can explain the issue. Reading through it real quick here. Okay, so yeah, so this one is important here. I like to let's do a deeper dive in here. It says that the scenario given or the mitigation given wouldn't uh, the control wouldn't mitigate against the actual um, scenario given.
Ah, okay. Which one are we at here?
This is issue number 16.
16. Thank you. All right, I'm going to copy that in. I'm going to copy the link in for notes because I find that helpful for later.
Yeah, so as I read it, I get what he's saying, but I don't know that that's the true spirit of the control. Um,
Yeah, you know what? I think maybe what really needs to happen here is kind of splitting up the problem,
yeah,
because there's many ways that backdoors can get into a system, anywhere from the backdoors in the source code, somebody subverted the build process, to, in this case, it's really, I would argue, a distribution problem.
right.
They got it from somewhere, but it wasn't. But where they got it from, it was hijacked.
Yeah, I mean, this is saying that you discovered it after you mirrored. You know what I mean? And now you're saying, well, we discovered it after we mirrored, so now we're contributing. We fixed it internally, but we're contributing the fix back, or something like that. That's how I read that.
Yeah, the
Um,
thing is that it really is. It was one of their official sources. It wasn't like somebody copied it somewhere else, made a change, and they're unrelated.
right.
If I understand this, I mean, now this is an old 2012. That's a long time ago. We might be able to. Oh,
This one is.
yeah. There's an update further down below. Um, yeah, it's not clear
To issue
from
16 was
this
the
how it
update?
was happening, huh?
To issue 16 there was an update? I see just the one
No, no,
comment.
no, 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 no. I'm sorry. Yeah, the Ars Technica article has an update.
Ah, yeah. And
Yeah,
that
I'm
and that
sorry. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah,
You're right.
basically, according to the updated portion of this article, it was subverted on the official SourceForge in this
Mhm.
case,
Yeah,
but only some versions. And at least in this article, it's not entirely clear how that happened.
yeah. Yeah, like I said, I think you know, in the spirit, I see his point, but I don't. The control, I'm not too sure that the spirit of the control is no. Like I said, maybe the parsing of the two different
Yeah,
threats might work to, and then you'd have to split up the mitigation strategy, split up the control to
yeah.
say this control for this control for that. But
Well,
that might work out a little bit better.
right. So let's kind of push down to brass tacks on this specific issue. It appears what happened was that the Korean mirror of SourceForge had a bunch of mirrors. One was in Korea. A file on the Korean mirror of SourceForge was subverted. Now, it doesn't appear that the subversion was in the original code at all. This was, or in its original created package. It was, but unfortunately, SourceForge was the official source. And if you happen to have gotten it in a particular day range from Korea and you got that particular file, which I guess a couple hundred people did, then you got the subverted one. I mean, one obvious solution to that is signed packages, which completely, if you verify the package, then that eliminates the issue. Hi, Six Door.
And I believe there's a control. There's a signed package control already there for something else. I think that's already. I think we already have that control in the.
Yeah, and so it may be. I think we may need to walk this one down carefully. Is this just, do we need to split up the spec a little more finely? Is it just this is a bad example? Which is entirely possible too.
Sign in here so I can respond to the. Unless you, David, you want to respond to the
I'm going to type into the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see here. Yes, the problem in this case was that a single mirror, the Korean mirror of SourceForge. Yeah, I have to admit that it identifies 0 day. I mean, SCA 5 slightly, but it mitigates it for others.
Yep.
How's this? Does mitigate the attack for others, but not really for the downloader. The strongest countermeasure is signing. Package signing is signing and checking the signature of packages. Do we need to modify the specification to all right, you know what? I'm going to just start with that.
I'm not sure how many you should have. Actually, just one. David was talking about Michael going to crosswalk between the two spec. I have some idea about that. One thing I've been attending is Henrik is actually hosting one of the work group on end user security threat model architecture. What I find productive actually the past couple of weeks is actually focusing on one area. In that case, it's developer machine. It's just basically where developers build their, do their job, right? So in the two spec, SALSA versus S2C2F, is there a way to map? In other words, if I read the whole thing, I probably after I'll forget. Is there a way to map these two in the subcategories? This way, I mean, during discussion, I can just focus on one area of the two spec.
So I think. Oh, go ahead, Jay.
No. Well, I was gonna say so both of these don't lay over on top of one another like that. If you want to take a supply chain from end to end, you'll see one starting on one end or one starting from one end and one starting from the other, and they're meeting kind of sort of in the middle somewhere. I don't know that that you'd find an area that you overlap and then provide. Although you know, if you're doing some of the stuff in salsa and you're getting those kind of artifacts, then some of the artifacts you're getting, you may be able to look at some of the controls in S2C2F and say, well, if I did this correctly, I should meet these controls. And then of course you can look over that and verify that, and then you're just doing you're just going through the different controls in S2C2F from an end user perspective and saying, okay, well, I need to apply these control here's, apply these control there's. The idea now, so I'll say this again, but maybe different. If you're doing some of the things in salsa, you may be able to say, you may be, getting those artifacts that I'm meeting these controls in S2C2F. Now, you have to look at the controls in S2C2F to determine whether, what you've done is meeting those controls. It's not just I've done this, so I'm meeting this. No, you want to make sure, because you are looking at these things from two different ends of the supply chain. I want to make that part clear. That being the case, you still just because you might be meeting a few of the controls from what you did in salsa, you still have to make sure you're meeting the level, the requirement of the level in S2C2F. So there may be other controls that are required to be met to reach that specific level, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. I'm saying that as a rule of caution. Just because you're doing one and one will help you meet controls in different areas of S2C2F, it doesn't mean you're meeting the full level requirement or the full maturity level requirement of that specific level in S2C2F because you have met some of the controls from how you've applied salsa. Does that make sense, Victor?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So I'm trying to just basically digest it a little in a small pieces. For example, I just posted the risk model. I mean the attack vector, I guess, database from Henrik's discussion. So how when we try to correlate the two spec, salsa and S2C2F, is it possible to talk about, like, for example, one particular attack, right? If we find one attack vector, and then that's in order to really safeguard against that attack, we need to do something with salsa, follow the salsa spec, and then for end user to be able to leverage that, they need to do some additional S2C2F step to make it happen, right? So that's one way. Or it could be, regardless whether it's built, salsa or S2C2F, it's all related to a developer laptop, right? Because even if you are an user, you're still using developer machine, laptop. So that might be a way to say, okay, we're just talking about developer laptop when it comes to both the build stage, the salsa part, and the end user stage. I'm just giving an example. I guess it's how do we put into two spec into pieces so we can just focus on one small area that's common between the two specs.
And so this is, first of all, I like this. This is all right. What you're looking for then is a threat matrix between both documents that you can map the threats and the mitigation strategies or recommended mitigation of those respective threats across both frameworks. So
yeah.
if you're mitigating a threat on one, if you overlaid them and you can say this threat and this threat, and you look at the controls from salsa and the controls from S2C2F, and you see those may be similar or there may be a difference, But if you're applying all of the controls that you see there, if there are differences, it might be the same, right? But if you're applying those controls, then you should be meeting that level, respective levels per the applied controls, per the mitigation or per the threat and the mitigation strategy based on the threat that you overlaid between both frameworks. That would be something that you can do from both S2C2F and SALSA, especially when you take the threat matrices that are within both, and you overlay them and say, this is the threat that's seen in both, and this is how one does it, and this is how the other does it, based on either from a consumer standpoint or from the producer standpoint. Like I said, those may be the same, but there may be differences in how the control gets applied or what type of tool is used, during the build or when you're consuming or injecting or you're mirroring or whatever it is. There might be something you do on the other side, right? That could mitigate the same control that you've overlaid. I'm saying a lot of words here, but you get where I'm going. Take the threat matrices, lay them on top of one another, find the similarities, identify the controls within each one, meet those, and you should be able to cover down on both of them, or one or the other, depending upon what the actual control is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, basically both the builder and the consumer need to do the right thing to prevent one particular threat.
Right, and sometimes it may be the same thing, sometimes it may be two different things, but it'll help attack it from both ends, so that if you do both, then with a degree of certainty, right? Not with 100%, with a degree of certainty, you will have mitigated that threat across your supply chain and your pipeline.
Yeah, and if I were to throw something out there as one extra thing, is the producer and consumer, it's about there's a trust relationship there. And so that's kind of where I think, SALSA is very focused on the producer side, right? And we've largely said, hey, it's up to you to figure out how you, consume and who to trust and yada, yada. And I think that's kind of where a lot of the S2C2F stuff comes in and says hey, assuming, let's say I do trust this person doing the right things, then what should I be seeing from them? What is the evidence? What are the things that I should be seeing from them, so that I know that, yes, this artifact is good or whatever.
Yeah, that's a great question, Victor. And also, man, thanks for that link. That link you sent that's some good stuff going on there. On the Indoor Labs. That's actually great stuff to this is actually great stuff to look at too. Lets us know if we're looking at if we're looking at what's on tap, what's in par with what's going on in the industry, what everybody else is seeing, but also have we advanced or pushed the needle with both SALSA and S2C2F? Are we moving the ball forward? Are we just recognizing common vulnerabilities, common concerns, or are we scaling and considering emerging threats? Are we getting creative, right? And my whole thing about the beauty that is information security in general is how artistic we can be with this. Are we getting creative enough around what the threat actor could actually come up with? And then are we saying these are potential or emerging threats that we got to build mitigation strategies around as well? So thank you for that very much, Victor. What other questions you got? That was good. Does anyone have anything else that they want? Oh, we have other issues here too. I mean, I brought that 16 out. I also looked down there. I saw issue number 12, and Adrian has responded. to Reggie already about the difference between SCA 5 and Fix 1. So that's good. We talked about the crosswalk already, and I know Adrian has got with, or is currently working on issue number 13. That was from you. That was from you, David. That was on the work on. And we did work on 17. We had some work on 17. I think 17 was the one that elicited a new control, audit 5 control, which is good. So that's actively being worked on as well. If anyone has any opinions on those, always put up any new issues for us to discuss as you see fit. Bring them here and lay them out. Hopefully on the next call we can get Melba. Once again, I go back to it. Melba's. Actually, as a matter of fact, I'm going to ask if we can post that on the Slack, and that way it's on the Slack and it's up for discussion. We put it to the agenda, and that way on our next meeting we have it up on the Slack and we have it in the agenda for the next time's discussion in a couple of weeks. 10 minutes left. Does anyone have anything else for the good of the order?
So I know we spoke about this before, and I think it's a relatively minor sort of thing. But I know one of the things that came out of KubeCon EU was a few folks were looking at S2C2F, and they looked at sort of the Microsoft website that it still says Microsoft S2C2F on that site. And I think just sort of highlighting sort of the difference between, hey, it's an OpenSSF project, Microsoft contributed it, and here's like the Microsoft tools that or whatever that we're using and Microsoft is selling, just to make sure that folks recognize that it is like it's an OpenSSF project now and that kind of thing.
Do you still see that? Do a crosswalk and check again, because that was my thing. Like over the last 2 weeks, I've been digging in people's. I can't say that next part. I've been digging in them all over the place to get that stuff changed.
So it's only just in these two places. Let me just copy this, where I think it caused some confusion. Where on that website there, where it's like it should be like, let's say the OpenSSF S2C2F is based on whatever, and then like the Microsoft approach or something like that, like just to make sure that it's clear, unless I might be pulling a cache page or something. It's been changed recently.
On the page I'm looking at right now, it just says S2C2F. It's on it's a Microsoft site, so it's Microsoft Security Engineering, and then it talks about S2C2F. Down. Oh, I see it right here at the top. Okay, so yeah, okay, so good. I'm seeing that needs to change. I talked about this before. That's at the top. It's at the bottom here, and I told them specifically that needs to change. We need to be putting a marker that it's been donated, contributed, because on all subsequent materials, blogs, and everything else, it says the right thing. Okay, okay, so good. I see it at the top here, at the bottom here. Yeah, we'll get that ironed out and changed. Can you do me a favor, Mike? Can you put that up as an issue on the
sure.
Issue on the GitHub. That needs to go in there as an issue.
Yep. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I've been a maniac over the last couple of weeks about that. Like I mean, look, and to operate in earnest here, right? We this is something that I want the industry to have its hands on, contribute to, build up, and be able to be utilized. And so I've been like a dog with a bone with this one. Get the damn, let the messaging fit the situation, right? Let the messaging be consistent across the board. So yeah, please put that up as an issue so we can fix it. Absolutely. That issue up there. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, hearing none, pose a motion to adjourn the meeting. I was hoping someone would say, put up a motion to adjourn the meeting. I could say said second. Okay, so moved. All, all those in favor of adjourning the meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All
We
those
actually
opposed?
don't have to, yes, we don't have to vote that way, but yes.
Yeah.
But you're having a
I'm
good time.
practicing. I'm
There you
practicing.
go.
Getting my shoulders ready. I'm practicing.
Gotcha. Okay.
I
All
think
right.
so.
Well, please take
Thank you
care,
all.
everybody.
Yeah, thank you all very much. See you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you. See you soon.